Coming to you from Austin, Texas on this damp and moist day, it's Color Commentary. And I'm Michael Petchek.
And I'm Adrian Gonzalez.
So starting off with F&M recap and moving right past the fact that I said the word moist and have probably lost us like 3 viewers.
Also moving past the fact that we played Magic on Thursday, I see.
Yeah, I guess that's true. We now have to do like Thursday and Friday recaps.
To be fair, Thursday was more, there were 4 of us, and one of us won $9, and the rest of us didn't win anything.
That's
basically what happened.
It was a little sad, but I don't know. I got to play Pauper.
Yeah.
And I played Teachings because I was feeling unfriendly. Also, the last time we were there was a bunch of elves and boggles.
Also, I feel like talking about Thursday is actually important for leading up to Friday's story, because Mike and I got paired together, and I was playing Pig Trinket on Thursday, and he was playing Teachings, and so it was just hard control versus hard control. And then Friday rolls around, and we get paired together again, round 1. Except this time, we're playing the exact same 75 cards.
Yeah, we were both on Pig Trinket, and it was a really good match. We wound up drawing because...
Yeah. I won game 1, Mike won game 2 in turns.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Basically top decked Crypt Rats and closed the game out, but like that is a very difficult matchup. The rest of my night went okay. I faced Elves round 2, which I just was never going to win. I managed to put up a good fight game 2, but it was just like, yeah, I'm not getting there. Round 3, I was paired up against Stompy, which I won, which I think is a good matchup for us, just in general with that deck. Their only real way to protect their dudes is blowing through pump spells, which is okay if I'm like putting -1/-1 counters or like using a Tragic Slip. I'm okay with them blowing through their pump spells on my turn. And Vines of the Vastwood. I don't know. I feel like that's a really, really solid matchup. I had some sweet plays. He had River Boa, which regenerates, and he only had enough mana to regenerate it once. So I put Crypt Rats on the stack twice, and
the old Crypt Rats trick.
Yeah, and watching him realize like the only way to get out of this is burning a pump spell, and it just wasn't worth it. Also, I didn't want to give it away, but that thing does have Island Walk, which seems good against us. But there's also only 2 islands in the entire deck.
Yeah, I mean, you can get around it. If you play an island, they play the Riverboa, you have bounce lands. You have options.
Yeah. Ooh, that'd actually be sweet. I didn't even think about the bounce land option.
Yeah,
and then last round I scooped, just because the other guy had a good record and I didn't. Yeah. I wasn't going to money, so, might as well let someone else money.
After you, I played against Drake, and I brought up to Mike that if you have a Crypt Rats out and like 4 mana up, they basically can't combo, because the second they try and flicker, you go Crypt Rats, kill all your stuff, or if you go Crypt Rats, kill all your stuff, they're like, okay, flicker, and they're like, okay, that happens, and now Crypt Rats trigger happens. And but I basically won the game by having a Crypt Rats out and like leaving up black mana for spell bombs the whole time, and I don't know. My opponent didn't seem very experienced, which I think it helped. Also, Keep a Gang Shinobi did a lot of work. It was the matchup doesn't feel unwinnable. We have enough interaction that I think it's actually okay. And then I went on to play Delver, which I absolutely crushed.
Yeah, Delver's surprisingly good.
He got kind of unlucky.
Yeah,
he got a little unlucky. I had like a turn 1 Fume Spitter, which is really very, very good against them.
Well, you're playing a lot of like very efficient removal, so you're often trading your like 1 mana spell for their 2 mana spell if they counter it.
Yeah.
So you're getting to do more things than they are. If you know the deck well enough, you know what you need to like bait out a counterspell with in order to resolve the thing you actually want. I don't know. I feel like that matchup is incredibly good for Pig Trinket. But yeah, it was pretty good. And you split last round, right?
Yeah, I split last round with a new Affinity player. Shouts out to the Brotherhood of Steel. He told me he came in with a bunch of advice, and the last round I actually, little known secret, I hate playing against Affinity. I really, really do. I know the deck so well, and I don't know. I hate playing against it. I love playing it. I hate playing against it. So I was really happy to take the split.
Maybe it's actually not a good deck for the format. Maybe it's unhealthy, buddy.
No, it's a great deck. It's just very stressful for me to play against it.
Well, yeah, because you know how quickly it can go off out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, those were both like good nights. I'm feeling better about getting back into the Pig Trinket loop. I'm probably going to try and show up with Bugs and Pigs, the Trinket Mageless version, next week.
Yeah, I'm thinking about buying some stuff for that.
Actually, Next week we're drafting Conspiracy. That's right.
Oh yeah, we are. And then well, also next weekend we're drafting Conspiracy because we're streaming the Pauper tournament. So you'll still have your dose of color commentary content. We're just deciding to have some fun instead of doing our job.
Well, we still might. Oh no, we're not going Thursday. That's right.
No, I have a doctor appointment.
Other stuff gets in the way. Life gets in the way. But we will be streaming. I'm hoping to. We're going to be doing interviews in between rounds, hopefully, with players talking about their decks, and hopefully I will be able to edit some of that down from the recording and put together like kind of a clip show episode. So you don't have to watch through what is going to be 6 to 8 hours worth of content.
Yeah, we'll dilute it. We'll take the choice bits and we'll chop them up into a fine, moist stew, which we'll serve you.
Just
next
going
week.
in on moist, I see. Like,
this was a group decision, Mike. You started it.
I started it, but you doubled down on it. All right, so first up today, we've got a deck tech. We've got Cyborgs, which we've touched upon it, right? I think we've mentioned it.
Maybe. And just so everyone knows, we have been hanging out on the Pauper Discord server. Tassanar from that server sent us this list initially, back when he invited us. So shouts out to everyone on the Discord server. Thanks for submitting this deck.
I believe the username for the actual list we've got here is Sniper Wave. I don't know if they have that same username everywhere, but regardless, Cyborgs is a white Metalcraft deck that's very aggressive. It runs a bunch of like sweet little interactions.
It's sort of like if you took parts of the kitty deck and parts of the mono white token list, but you instead ran a lot of equipment and like tried to beat face with metal. Well, the first creature on the list is 4 of Ardent Recruit, which is a 1/1 for 1 +2/+2 Metalcraft.
Yeah, and it's followed up then by 4 copies of Court Homunculus, which is a 1/1 artifact creature for 1 white, and it gets +1/+1 if you control another artifact. Like, it's very, very all in on the let's create artifact synergy in a mono white deck.
Yeah, we've 8 1/1s here to start.
Yeah, 8 1/1s that become very big very quickly in this deck. Because you can go like turn 1, spoiler alert, there's Ancient Dens in this. There's artifact lands.
Right.
You could go like Ancient Den into Court Homunculus, turn 2, Court Homunculus, Plains, Ardent Recruit, and you have 7 power on the board on turn 2.
Yeah, I mean, totally doable. And then it's followed up by 4 Glinthawks, so just another like big 1-drop.
Yeah, Glinthawk, we'll get to something further down. There's a weird little interaction here. We've got 3 core Skyfishers, 2 1 in white, 2/3 bounce something when it comes into play.
Probably one of the better, if not one of the best flyers in the format.
Yeah.
Delver kind of counts because it's a 3/2 flyer, but this trades with Delver. This generates value in the Jeskai Kitty decks. This is just a very, very solid creature card. It's one of the staples of our format. If you're in white, you're probably playing core Skyfish.
And this deck, kind of its modus operandi is like trying to get the most efficient trade-off of mana cost to power as possible.
Right.
And this is like 2 mana for a 2 power in the air. Then we've got Cube All-Star, 4 of Porcelain Legionnaire, which is a 3/1 first strike for technically 3 mana, but it's 2 and a Phyrexian white, so it's most often 2 mana.
Right, it's 2 mana, 2 life for a 3/1 with first strike. Very powerful in this deck. As we get a little further down, we do have some equipment here.
Yep.
So the first strike is very relevant, and it's not unreasonable to think that this guy could easily be a 5/1 most games.
Yeah. 4 Squadron Hawk. They hold the other equipment really well. They help you refill your hand. Like there's
White Brainstorm, some have called it.
What I've heard people jokingly refer to it as a ancestral visions with ancestral recall with a body because you draw 3 cards off of it.
Yeah.
And they're always squad hawks, but
it happens.
And then 4 Thraben Inspectors, the 1/2 for 1 white that comes down with a clue. So that clue helps count towards Metalcraft. It's card draw in the late game.
You could bounce it with Glinthawk if you need to.
Yeah,
that's part of Glinthawk's. You have to either bounce an artifact or sacrifice it. And then there actually is a 1 of little spicy. I'll let you take it.
I wanted to leave this one to the end. It's Guardian of the Guildpact, the Pauper True Name Nemesis. It's 2/3 with protection from monocolored for 3 and a white. It gets in against most every deck. The only things that really block it in this format that come to me off the top of my head are Stuff and Affinity.
Yeah, it's
like
Frogmite, Mirror Enforcer. We don't really have a lot of multicolored creatures in this format.
Yeah, the only thing that's really coming to mind is Cavern Harpy, and that doesn't block well.
Ponyback Brigade in the Mardu Tordax list, of course.
Yeah, we're stretching real thin here.
Yeah.
But the Guardian gets in against most decks, so it is more evasive than Flyers in a lot of cases.
Right, and then you put a... Moving on to artifacts, you put a Bone Splitter, one of the 4 Bone Splitters in your deck on this guy.
Yep.
Suddenly, you basically have True Name Nemesis and Umezawa's Jite.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Bone Splitter, I believe, is the most efficient power to mana ratio for a pauper legal equipment. So this deck is aggressive. It's running it. It doesn't care that it doesn't buff toughness. It's just, okay, I've turned my Squadron Hawk into a 3/1.
It's the sword of the format.
Yeah, it's just incredibly efficient. We've got 2 Flare Husks. Neat little interaction here. The Flare Husk, once the token dies, if you chump it, and then you play, like, I don't know, Glinthawk or Core Skyfisher, you can recast it and get the Germ token back as another chump blocker.
Or you could bounce the token in Skyfisher's case. I don't think that's very good, but you could do it. Or bounce it with Glinthawk. And the 1/1 is relevant.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It becomes and then it becomes equipment for Guardian on one of your Flyers later.
Yeah. Then we got 4 Glinthawk Idols. Glinthawk Idol is a 2-mana artifact, I believe.
It's something.
Well, the point is, when an artifact enters the battlefield, it turns into a 2/2 flyer.
It turns into Glinthawk.
It turns into a Glinthawk until end of turn, and I believe you can also pay 1 white to activate it.
Yeah, 1 and a white. I think.
1 and a white. I'm not going to bother pulling it up. The point is, it's an artifact that counts towards your Metalcraft and also turns into a 2/2 flyer.
Correct. So that's the important part here.
And the super interesting thing is, sometimes it activates just by you playing your turn. Sometimes it just gets paid for. Like, it's a mana sink, and it's a threat that they need instant speed removal to deal with.
Right. It's a in any other deck it wouldn't be good. In this deck it's fine.
And then finally, we got a singleton Tooth of Chisgoria.
Which, for those of you who don't know, is an affinity artifact with flash. It costs 3. You can tap it to give a creature +1/+0 until end of turn.
Yep. This also kind of has a neat little synergy with the Skyfisher effects, because you can have it out, use it, bounce it back, play it back, possibly for free, and pump selling again.
Right.
So it's like a very janky Bone Splitter in some cases. Flash does also mean it's a combat trick. Like, it's not a dreadfully efficient one or a dreadfully large one, but
sometimes you just need the extra point.
Yeah. Then lands, 4 Ancient Dens, 4 Darksteel Citadels, 10 Plains. So as many efficient artifact lands as it can run. 3 Journey to Nowheres. It's just good removal in white. We don't have Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile, so this is kind of the default.
Journey to Nowhere is a kind of an interesting card. It's good here also with Core Skyfisher, because you can blank Journey to Nowheres. It's a fun trick. I got Journey the other night, and I was like, sack my creature in response, and so now it has to sacrifice or it has to target his creature instead.
Yeah, it's a fun little, like, weird niche play that is relevant sometimes.
Right, and of course, to note, you have to do it with the spell on the stack instead of the trigger on the stack. Otherwise, they target it and then nothing happens. So
yeah,
you can totally blow out people that way.
Yeah, it just needs a target. So moving on to the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Cop Red, just really solid when you're playing white. There's no better way to answer burn.
It's the best circle protection in my opinion.
Yeah, we got 2 Gut Shots, just very efficient, free removal. You're an aggro deck. You're not caring about the 2 life.
You can go hit me with your gut shot. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, dear. We're just endeavoring to lose fans
that's so
here.
Funny, too. Someone asked me the other night, on Friday, doesn't Stompy play Hornet Sting? And I was like, absolutely not. Why wouldn't you play Gut Shot instead?
Yeah,
it does the same thing, except it's free.
In a lot of the aggro lists, it's just better than a 1-mana ping something, because it's free.
It kills a lot of really relevant creatures too, not least of which are unflipped Delvers.
Yeah. We got one core sanctifiers. Excuse me. It's a 2/3 for 2 and a white with kicker 1 white. When it ETBs, you get to blow up a artifact or enchantment.
And has synergy with core Skyfisher.
Yeah. 2 Last Breath, probably an inclusion for Drake.
Right. We've talked with Ullman about this card. This card is White's best answer to Drake, if not one of the best answers in the format to Drake.
Just to recap, 1 and a white, exile target creature with power 2 or less. Its controller gains 4 life.
So it hits everything in their deck and gets rid of it permanently.
Yeah. Also, in this aggro deck, you're not really caring about 4 life. You can get there easily. Like, just throw a Bone Splitter on something and you're almost there.
Right, and yeah, killing them versus them, stopping their combo versus them gaining 4 life is strong.
We got a Lone Missionary in here. That's probably, for your other aggro matchups like Stompy. Gain 4 life, trade with a creature is probably good enough.
Or Skyfisher, again, abusing those ETB triggers.
Yep. We got Patrician Scorn, a real spicy number for mono white lists. I don't actually know what the mana cost on this thing is because
4, I want to say.
4?
I want to say it's 4.
Well, it destroys all enchantments, but the important part is it has the text, if you have cast a white spell this turn, you may cast Patrician Scorn without paying its mana cost. So...
Free spells are good.
Free spells are good. It hits pretty much nothing in your deck in the matchup it matters, because you're not playing Journey against Boggles.
Or Cop Red, so...
Yeah, like, it's pretty crushing. Then we got 2 Relic of Progenitus, probably again for Drake. Also for your assorted Graveyard Synergy decks.
Pig Trinket, for instance, if that is somehow throttling your meta.
Yeah. 3 Sunlance. It is as close to a Lightning Bolt as White ever gets.
I'm not really sure how I feel about Sunlance. I go back and forth. It's 3 damage for White, sure. It's also sorcery, which makes it kind of bad, but I guess you take what you can get.
Yeah, and then we got 2 copies of Vault Scourge, 1 and a Phyrexian black mana, so it's always 1 and 2 life in this deck. You have no way to generate black mana. And it's a 1/1 flyer with lifelink, which is a great target for a Bone Splitter. Like,
yeah,
3 life a turn is nothing to sneeze at, because, like, for example, against Burn or something like that, you're blanking 1 bolt a turn. That's good.
It races really easily. It's a good card.
All right, now to our last kind of segment that we've been doing the past couple weeks, the cost of this thing. So in paper, it is $32, which is a little bit high for a deck that has a lot of cards that I feel are kind of don't have a lot of crossover. You got parts of this, like Skyfisher's go in a lot of things. Ancient Dens can go in Affinity as well as Kitty decks. Darksteel Citadel can go in Affinity. Flare Husk in Affinity.
Is Ancient Den the most expensive card in this deck? Because
I believe it is.
Ancient Dens are something absurd. I want to say they're
$250.
Like, yeah, they're up there in price. So that's a third of this deck is your Ancient Dens.
Also, just of note, Journey to Nowhere is still like $2 in paper.
Okay, that's the other third, I guess, almost third.
So on the good side, the expensive cards in this are ones that go into other decks. I will note online though, Card Hoarder, 8 ticks.
8 tickies.
Like $8 for a deck that's pretty passable. Not tier 1 by any extent, but like a pretty good aggro deck that does have some crossover with other decks in terms of building a collection. It could be worse.
Look, I have almost all the pauper cards on Moto. I didn't do that overnight.
Yeah. I don't know. I would if you like aggro and you like white and you like artifact synergy and you don't just want to play affinity, this seems fine to me.
I would also actually like to, speaking of Moto and building collections, this is not really on our agenda today, but I do want to take a little sidestep here. The bot chain that I use, MTGO Traders, actually has a physical store called Cape Fear Games, and you can send in your paper cards to Cape Fear Games and ask for MTGO Traders credit on Moto.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can trade your physical cards for MTGO credit, and they're basically buy list prices, but the positive here is that your cards in paper are generally worth more than they are on Moto, so you can make a lot more money on Moto. Your cards in real life will go a lot farther on Moto with your trade-in value.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there. If you're interested in getting into Moto, you have some paper cards you don't want. That's what I did to get my Modern and Legacy decks when I first started out. Just really great program.
Do they do it the other way around? Like, let's say you're trying to get out of Moto and get into paper. Can you trade in Moto stuff?
I'm not 100%. I know you can sell them your stuff for tickets, or you can sell your stuff for tickets, and then you can sell your tickets for like, I want to say 90 cents on the dollar or something.
Okay, so you can get money out of it that you could then use at their store.
Yeah, you can cash out on Moto. I'm not sure if you can get store credit through that though. I would have to look. I've never tried.
Yeah. I also, as a side note, I stopped using it a while ago, but Puka Trade, the trading website that some have criticized for being slightly similar to a pyramid scheme, they are launching, I think in a couple days, the ability to trade Mitgo cards on there.
That's
so
cool.
you could trade online cards into paper cards or vice versa.
Puka Trade is a whole other discussion that other people have done to death.
Yeah.
But it's a thing, and adding MTGO stuff is good.
Yeah, I think it's only beneficial for them, and they've kind of had a rough patch in the news. So, but yeah, I think this is a solid list. It's a little bit away from tier 1, but if it appeals to you, I'd say pull the trigger. It's not super expensive in terms of pauper decks, and the cards that are pricey, you will get use other places. So moving on.
So our next discussion, we're actually hoping will be a bit of a recurring segment, and special thanks to David Kane for giving us this suggestion. Essentially, we're going to go into we're going to showcase a particular card, not necessarily out of the deck tech we just did, although today we are. The card up for today is Guardian of the Guildpact. It's basically our format's true name nemesis or etched champion, in that it's very difficult to kill. Most decks in this format are monocolored. Or if they're not, the removal at least is monocolored. And I think we mentioned earlier, there are very few multicolored creatures, if any. Really only artifact creatures can get rid of it. We do have a small list of spells here that could potentially kill it. The first one of which is Terminate.
So yeah, I think another thing to point out with the single card discussions as we do them, we're going to try to kind of focus on cards that don't have a home in a tier 1 deck yet, but are very powerful in a vacuum. Kind of the Nimble Mongoose effect, where it on paper everything looks great, but then you realize there's no deck that can really abuse this. So yeah, Terminate is one way to kill it. One black and a red, destroy target creature, can't be regenerated.
A criminally underplayed spell in our format, honestly.
Yeah, just very premium removal. Agony Warp kills it if you target it with the -0, -3 half of it.
And that's probably the most relevant spell on our list, I think most.
It's very common in teachings.
Yeah, very common card.
I think even sometimes the blue-black Angler Delver lists play it.
Yeah. And of course, we're not going into the obvious cards like Edicts. Edicts obviously kill this card on an empty board.
Yeah. Branching Bolt, red and a green. I think it hits a creature with flying and a creature without flying, or a creature without flying.
Yeah, you can choose
for 3 damage each.
Yeah, you can choose to not hit a creature with flying.
Yeah. Sadly, it's white, so it's probably in a deck with flyers. I feel like a lot of the white decks kind of just auto-include either Kitty or Core Skyfisher, or something like Auriok Sunchasers for the Metalcraft list.
Actually, that's pretty good. Then Branching Bolt would be good against this deck.
Yeah. And also, it can't get through a lot of Affinity's threats, which is a very relevant thing given that that's one of the top tier decks.
Right.
So, on face value, it is kind of a true name nemesis. It's very, very hard to interact with. Sweepers don't hit it. Fun fact.
They're all monocolored, or in the case of like Shrivel or Nausea, they don't do enough. It's a 2/3.
I mean, we were joking before the show started. You can triple Nausea to get rid of this thing. And I don't think most mono black lists are running 3 copies of Nausea.
Yeah, in mono black, you basically have to hope to remove their other stuff and then chainers this.
Yeah, that is a valid point. Like a Nausea that wipes your board in White Weenie, followed up by an Edict effect, does just kill this.
Right.
Also, it blocks really well. Like if you can get flying onto this thing, and that's another one of the catches, it's very hard to buff this guy. Like he carries swords really well. He does not carry much of anything else really well.
No, he wears Armadillo Cloak.
He wears Armadillo Cloak.
Or
Soul Link, which is 1 a white and a black. It's a aura. Whenever an enchanted creature deals or is dealt damage, you gain that much life.
I also think that any of the cycle, we mentioned we didn't mention Crystallization, that whole cycle, the
Shards of Alara 3-color enchantments.
Right, but the positive ones. You could enchant him with this. I'm not sure it's what the black and the white one does. I think it gives lifelink. I don't know. I honestly don't.
So I remember crystallization is it's
Banned.
it's white and a green or a blue. It's a pacifism effect, but it has the added upside of if the creature becomes the target of a spell, ironically, very difficult to do in this situation, you exile it. So,
But I want to say I meant the positive ones. Like, no, I guess those are from like Shadowmoor.
oh, you're thinking of the Shadowmoor ones?
Yeah, I'm thinking of like steal the Godhead and stuff.
The deity boons.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for the confusion.
Actually, so wait, Steal of the Godhead would give it +1/+1 and indestructible. I forget what the halves of that are.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just saying, like, there are some enchantments that can hit it, but they're very few and far between. Really, this guy's around in the deck we just mentioned to carry equipment, which is what it does best.
Well, so here, let me hit you with a deck that I've actually played that, while not good, made an interesting use out of this guy. I, for a long time, was trying to make Black-White Pestilence work as a deck.
Oh.
This thing lives through Pestilence.
This guy's very good with Pestilence.
And more importantly, it keeps Pestilence around.
Right.
So it does have a synergy there, and there's other things that can do that. Like in paper, we've got Cemetery Gate, which is a wall with protection from black, or just playing stuff with absurdly high toughnesses keeps Pestilence around. But this guy's a really weird case because he just prevents all the damage. It just rolls off him.
Yeah, and if you could put that aura on him, then you could just gain the life that you're spending on Pestilence.
What do you think I was doing with this
Is that
deck?
what you were doing? Oh, dear sweet God. Why?
To be fair, I keep trying to make like terrible decks like that work. Like I've wanted for the longest time to figure out how to make Touch of Moonglove and Crypt Rats work. Touch of Moonglove gives a creature death touch, and every time a creature it deals damage to dies, its controller loses 2 life. So I've been trying to figure out some way where it's just like pop Crypt Rats for 1, you lose 20. I don't know. It seems like a sweet little piece of tech against elves, but no, this is definitely like a really interesting and powerful effect, and a unique one too. And it just doesn't have a home. That's the catch. Like you've talked, I forget, did you mention your idea to put this in Affinity on the show?
Maybe. I think so.
Where you said if Cranial Plating was unbanned, the first thing you would do is put this into it.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I've talked about it on the show, but yeah, I mentioned that. This dude is an excellent carrier of Cranial Plating.
Yeah. Sadly, never getting unbanned.
Right. No,
but
it was the first one in.
first one in, never coming out.
Yeah, never going to be the one out. Yeah, so, as you were sitting here thinking, does this guy even really belong in an aggro deck? Because you put him in some sort of, like, blue-white or red-white control deck.
I don't hate him in, like, a white Tron deck.
Yeah, and then he's your win con. He's not as flashy as other win cons, but slow and steady, control the game.
Yeah. I mean, it is like out of all those spells we mentioned, we were digging deep. Branching Bolt, I have never actually seen played in a game that I have participated in or watched ever. So
it costs 3 mana. At the end of the day, it costs 3 mana.
Like it's just weird. Red green's not a great color combo in this format.
Right.
Really, red always wants to be with blue or white.
Or
by itself. Yeah, like it's just not one of those very good cards, and like a lot of these are very fringe answers. I think the big thing keeping this guy back is always going to be the fact that Mirror Enforcer just eats it.
Yeah.
And Mirror Enforcer is usually free.
Yeah. Mirror Enforcer is a heck of a Magic card. I can attest to that. The triple Enforcer turn. I've had it. It's fun. It's great. Your opponent looks super crushed.
Relevant point here. Also doesn't match up great on defense against Kiln Fiends when they've got the battle Temur Battle Rage.
Oh yeah, this guy does not care about trample damage. You just you don't do 3 to him and then the rest goes over.
You I believe you have to assign what would be lethal.
Yeah.
So
that's what I meant. You do 3 damage to him, but it doesn't actually do anything. You miss out on 3 damage basically.
Yeah, he basically is just chopping 3 damage off, and that's very, very easy sometimes to get with Kiln Fiend. So not super great against that. I don't know. It's just such a cool card, and it's a very... The only other card I can think of that's weird like this is there was something from, I want to say, Shadowmoor called Miss Meadow Skulk that had protection from CMC 3 or greater. Like, it's in that same realm of, like, this feels like it should be good. but in practice, it's kind of not.
I also realized he did stone nothing against the Cyclops.
Oh yeah.
Cyclops is a multicolored creature.
Oh wow.
How did we forget about Cyclops when we're talking about multicolored creatures? That's
Yeah.
a big one to forget.
Yeah. So terrible against Delver Fiend. The lack of flying is kind of a pain because I feel like a decent amount of stuff you want to be blocking is in the air. Like if this thing had flying and cost one more, actually no, 5 is a little much. If this thing was in the air and it could trade with Delver, it would see much more play. Just because Mono White has always wanted a really good effective answer that keeps flyers at bay.
Well, even Riftwatcher.
I mean, even Riftwatcher's fine, but I don't know. Something that just sits there and chumps and just eats a thing every turn.
I got you.
That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a card where objectively seems very powerful, but once we take a broader look at the format, it just doesn't really have a spot, and like Mike said, 4 mana kind of kills it.
If we get really good equipment in Kaladesh, I'm probably going to try this out again, though.
Oh, man, Kaladesh. I'm so stoked for Kaladesh.
So actually, speaking of Kaladesh, we just got a bunch of spoilers for Conspiracy 2, Take the Crown.
Electric Boogaloo?
Yeah, I was trying not to, but the joke was always going to happen.
I said it, don't
worry. We're going to be drafting this next week. It looks super fun.
Yeah, the set is going to be a blast and a half.
Yeah, I definitely am like really looking forward to drafting this. I might crack a box of it. I might like buy a box of it for a rainy day for drafting.
Even before foil show and tell.
Yeah. Also the value, like that's the catch. Like I kind of want to crack a box for value because there are such high dollar cards in it.
The EV of this set is insane. Unfortunately, not that great for Pauper.
Well, let me hit you with something. It might actually be good in a roundabout way. This is not getting a full release on MitGo. I really don't want the difference between paper and Magic Online to broaden even more. But it seems like they did a much better job of designing cards that are definitely better in multiplayer.
Yes.
Where you're rewarded for having a 4-player game versus a 2-player. Because the issue with Conspiracy 1, and the reason why some of the cards were so good, is they had a voting mechanic, Will of the Council. And it was always basically in 2-player, the caster makes the decision. And you can make another decision. Like, for example, let's go with the one that people have talked about in Pauper, Custody Squire. Custody Squire is a 3/3 flyer for 4 and a white, and it has Will of the Council. When it enters the battlefield, each player votes for a artifact, creature, or enchantment in your graveyard. And everything with the most votes or tied for the most votes goes back to your hand. So
it's very expensive Gravedigger.
Very expensive broad Gravedigger. But you vote for something, and your opponent has to vote for the same thing. Otherwise, you're getting 2 things back.
Right.
With this, their new version of it, everyone votes, but you basically get an effect for each vote. So it's like one of the examples that we will probably will never see play. There's I forget the name of it. It's a 4 and a white, 2/2. When it comes in, everyone votes. One of the votes gives it a +1/+1 counter. The other one gives you a 1/1 soldier token.
Right. So now it doesn't, like, the votes feel like they matter more.
Yeah. The amount of votes.
Yeah.
But the big thing is this new mechanic, the Monarch.
The Monarch. I'm Dr. Girlfriend.
So the Monarch, being the Monarch is, so there are cards that say you become the Monarch. And being the Monarch has the effect, at the beginning of your end step, you draw a card.
So you're always going to, it's like a reverse Howling Mine sometimes. Or like if your opponent takes it from you, they'll also draw the card. Key difference is you get the first draw no matter what.
Yes, that is super important because the big downside of most Howling Mines is your opponent benefits from it first. So if they have artifact removal, they just blow it up.
Now, is this an artifact or is this an emblem?
It is. I believe it's not an emblem. I believe it just exists. It's just like it's a game state. Like, I don't know if there's a comparable thing. I think you're just the Monarch. But the important thing is, Mike, you say, my opponent has become the Monarch. How do I become the Monarch?
Well, it's quite easy.
Yeah,
first, you hire a ghost assassin.
Yeah, who you gonna call? Whenever someone deals combat damage to the player who is the monarch, they become the monarch.
Right. So in a multiplayer format, you have 4 people who are ostensibly trying to become the monarch. So no one's going to be the monarch for very long. However, in 2-player, the mechanic seems a lot more powerful. Where where we're talking about this is in a control deck, where you play one of these creatures that makes you become the monarch after you've already ground your opponent down, and then you just drown them in raw card advantage by being able to draw cards and while answering their threat simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the best one for that is our first one here, which is Thorn of the Black Rose, which is a 1/3 for 4 with Death Touch.
Yeah. So 1/3 for 1/3 for 3 and a black, Death Touch. When it ETBs, you become the monarch. So let's compare this to Seagate.
Right, that's one of my favorite comparisons also.
Seagate, also a 1/3, only costs 3, is blue, and you get to look at the top 2 and you get to pick 1. So it's a one-time card advantage, barring any flickering shenanigans. Is this something that Teachings actually wants?
So I almost don't know. One thing that's good about Seagate is he blocks aggro decks because he's cheap. Well, not because he's cheap. He's a 1/3 for 3. He's cheaper than this. This is a 1/3 with Death Touch, so its block range goes through the roof. It basically kills anything.
Yeah.
Right. So the turn you cast this card, it is worse than Seagate because you don't get to select between the two. If you manage to keep it for another turn, the card is better than Seagate because you've drawn 2 cards.
Yes. I'd also like to point out the big thing that people kept discussing is, in a control deck, it's hard to stay the monarch because a lot of times you're like taking a small hit because it's not worth using a removal spell or using one of your few creatures to block. So
I would counter argue that you're not playing this spell on turn 4. You're playing this spell on like turn 6 or 7.
Yeah.
After the board is already clear.
Well, that's something. Also, let me hit you with this. Ghostly Flicker.
Yeah.
It's on ETB, so, you could just, I don't know, if you're a Teachings deck running Mnemonic Wall or, what's the other one, Archaeomancer, this thing could just become, every turn I become the monarch, and maybe it's just a Howling Mine, but...
Well, you could also become the monarch on your opponent's turn. It's on,
that's true.
It's on instep. You can become the monarch during any point during your opponent's turn.
At the end of second main for their turn, flicker this and an Archaeomancer, get back the monarchhood, and
Yeah. If you have that loop, you could always deny them being the monarch. I don't know if it's worth contributing 3 slots in your deck to always being the monarch, right? Like that only time will tell on that. However, it has been shown that Ghostly Flicker and Mnemonic Wall in a control deck is just plain good.
Yeah, just being able to abuse ETB effects on other things.
Yeah, mostly
casually.
Mostly just for like the Seagate Oracles, or you can flicker the wall and get back a counter spell if you need it. You don't have to keep the Ghostly Flicker loop, but it isn't a bad loop.
Yeah. I kind of want to move on to our next one here. Palace Sentinels, 3 and a white for a 2/4. When it ETBs, you become the monarch.
Yeah, so it's almost exactly the same. It doesn't have Death Touch, but has an extra point of power.
Yeah, and an extra point of toughness.
That's true.
I like this one kind of more because you slot it into an aggressive white deck, and I feel like it's much easier to protect your status as the monarch.
The only issue that I have with it being in an aggressive deck is that it's a 4-drop.
Yeah, the 4 mana sometimes is a little hard to reach in those decks. Maybe this goes into White Weenie Tokens, which is less aggressive, more kind of a little mid-rangey, because it kind of has a lot of setup involved. Getting your Soul Sisters out, then going into like your big token spells.
And sort of in the same vein as the last card, if you core Skyfisher this and play it again, you become the monarch again.
That's true. I think like the big thing that's keeping me from thinking these are really great in this format is just the fact that you can lose that source of card advantage by getting hit by a 1/1. Like if they just have one more attacker than you have blockers, you need to hit them back. So, otherwise, you're kind of losing the race.
So I've played a deck similar to this. I've played a mechanic, similar to this. The All-in Affinity deck in Legacy that plays Contested Warzone. And Contested Warzone is another card where every time a creature hits you, the opponent gains control of it. And yeah, it's very swingy. If you're the one with the creatures, it's fine, right? It's like, oh, all my guys get +1/+0. All my guys get Battle Cry. But
Yeah.
then it's like if they have like a Tarmogoyf, they can like hit you back and they take it and suddenly you're down a mana. So in that case, it's a little worse because they can deny you mana that way. But it's very swingy. So yeah, only time will tell if this mechanic is actually good in our format. It is exciting though.
And here's the kind of sad thing: if none of these make it online, which is weird because some of the stuff from 2 years ago from Conspiracy 1 did make it online. For example, Tyrant's Choice, which is either an edict or everyone else takes 4 damage, is online.
Or Will of the Council. I mean, not Will of the Council's Judgment.
Council's Judgment,
the issue, and someone pointed this out in the Reddit, is that the vast majority of these cards did not make it online, or if they did, they were not the commons.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible there will become them. But like if you're playing a cube draft, which is where these got added in, was like reward packs for cube draft.
I believe last time it was the legendary cube, right?
Yeah. Or for BMA, it's like if you're playing online, do you want these like kind of garbage commons? You know,
not
like
really.
I would rather have like Queen Marchesa.
Yeah,
which is a way more fun looking card.
I think there's definitely going to be a prioritization on like the big flashy mythics and that sort of stuff because some of them are kind of legacy playable. There's a couple of them, like there's a White Imperial Recruiter basically that has been getting a lot of talk on the message boards.
I mean, you don't become the Monarch, but yeah.
Yeah.
So cards like that, they'll probably have to put on Moto just because it's like a legacy playable card, and like even for so that's actually kind of interesting. That brings another point because I've often wondered what would happen if they tried to have the same format disparity, and I just don't think they'll do it. I think that they will print these in another set on Moto.
Yeah. I don't know. I really hope they do. And some of them are quite reasonable. Our next one that we pulled aside to talk about, Sinuous Vermin, 1 and a black, 2/2. Okay. That's actually just fine for black.
That's actually a better rate for black than most of its other creatures.
Yeah. Black does not get just bears with no downside that often. But a returning keyword from Theros block, I believe?
Yes, Theros.
Monstrosity is in this set. So for those who don't know about Monstrosity, it has a number assigned to it and a mana cost. You pay the mana cost, you put X number of +1/+1 counters on it, and the creature is monstrous. You cannot play this ability if it's monstrous.
So, interesting thing, you could double stack your monstrous if you had enough mana. You could activate monstrous and activate monstrous in response.
No, the second time's not going to do anything.
No, it is because the creature's not yet monstrous when you activate monstrous because the ability has
but the second one when it goes to resolve.
Okay, that's
the one that went on the stack first.
You're right.
You can't cheat around this. They were very careful with it.
All right, Mike is right. I thought you could do this twice.
So in this case, monstrous 3 and 2 black. And it gets 3 +1/+1 counters, so it becomes a 5/5. And then it says as long as Sinuous Vermin is monstrous, it has menace.
So for way more mana, you could have a much better Gurmag Angler. Although actually, maybe not. One of Angler's big things is also that it's a zombie. This is not a zombie.
Yes, it is a rat horror.
Because it gets around Victimonite and some other relevant spells. But this still doesn't die to Doomblade. I don't know. It's
interesting.
Similar. Yeah, it's a 5/5 per menace. It's good.
Yeah. I kind of like the fact they brought back Monstrosity. I really, really like it as a mechanic. I think they kind of dug a little deep on it, not super deep. I wouldn't have minded seeing a couple slightly more pushed monstrous cards. Not like Fleecemane Lion pushed, but definitely could have pushed it a little bit more. The last one is actually the card I'm the most excited about.
This is the one where I looked at and I was like, this is playable.
Okay, so let's just look at the stats first. Borderland Explorer, 1 and a green, 3/1.
Which is actually a very common rate these days for white vanilla creatures.
Yep.
Not so common in green, but there are a lot of 3/1 white vanilla creatures getting printed lately.
All right, so it would be, borderline passable, or borderland passable. Just as a vanilla creature. This thing has a huge block of text in it. There's upside to this.
Mike, I can't read. Tell me what it does.
When Borderland Explorer enters the battlefield, each player may discard a card. Each player who discarded a card in this way may search his or her library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into his or her hand, then shuffle his or her library.
And now this is a super sweet ability. Obviously, this goes with Madness. Obviously, this goes with Reanimator. I'm not sure if this is the card that will push those decks to be tier 1, but it is a very strong card. If you were playing a green Madness deck, you have another discard outlet, so you get a thing and you get a land. It's not terrible.
I mean, you mentioned Reanimator. You mentioned Madness. Tortured Existence also likes this, I think. Helps you hit your land drops.
Oh yeah, you just don't care about the card you're discarding. You discard Golgari Brown Scale.
Yeah, you discard a Dredger. And one of the issues with that deck that I've seen sometimes is, if you get Dredge happy, you can run out of land drops real quickly.
Okay.
And that deck does want lands.
That's pretty fair. The only downside then to this card is that you have to actually cast it for do this ability. Although I think Golgari Brown Scale is the only card with an ability that goes from graveyard to hand. So
yeah, I think
probably
it's
asking for a little too much.
Okay, so let's talk about this guy though, because you are also giving your opponent the chance to do that.
Right. And then it's the whole question: is this better than Wandering Satyr, which gets you a land anyway?
Oh, the one that mills 5.
Yeah, is that card not called Wandering Satyr? It's something.
Yeah. No. That sounds right.
Satyr. Okay.
I was just trying to make sure because I think they also printed a Voyaging Satyr.
Yeah, Voyaging Satyr untaps a land.
Yeah, so I was just a little confused because both of those terms are very, very similar. Someone needs to be reminded. Maybe less synonyms.
Yeah, but so I wonder if it's better than Wandering Satyr, which mills only you and you get the land anyway. Although I guess you could miss, and with this one you're always getting the land.
Yeah, I don't know. This just seems like a very, very compact and interesting design, coupled with like a very decent body. Like it trades up a lot of the time.
It's fairly unique.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems super interesting, and I really hope they bring this one to Mitgo. Someone's gonna figure out how this thing is good.
Well, and then there are some decks like against Affinity, only you are getting the land. They can't go get a basic land.
Oh, is it basic?
Yes.
Ooh, that's actually another.
Yeah, it's a basic.
That's real interesting, actually. So, actually, the first thing I thought when I saw this, it kind of reminds me of Krosan Tusker in a weird way because it has the same ability as Krosan Tusker. In the end, you're discarding a card, you're getting a land, you're not drawing a card. But
don't compare this to Big Pig, Mike.
I'm sorry. I've offended the Big Pig, and I will atone for my sins in some way.
Praise Pig.
Praise the pig. Praise him. But it is a very similar effect in you discard a card, you get a basic land to hand.
Yes.
I don't think this guy's a replacement for Sakura Tribe Elder at all.
Heavens, no.
No, and I'm not even talking in Pig Trinket. I'm just talking in general because Sakura Tribe Elder has seen play in other spots. It's still a pretty good card, even if you can't recur it.
The difference here is this land goes to hand. Sakura Tribe Elder puts it on the battlefield, so Sakura Tribe Elder's true ramp.
Yeah, Sakura Tribe Elder is true ramp. This guy just makes it so you hit your land drops. Is a better body. The body does stick around after you get the land. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, this is just a really cool design, and it's a really neat space for a common.
Yeah, it's definitely the most interesting card in the set for me as well. Time will tell if it's good.
Yeah, this is definitely the one I hope gets online the most because I want to see what happens with this. Maybe this helps push a red-green Madness deck over the edge. Does also synergize with what do you call it? Nimble Mongoose.
Actually, yeah, because you'll discard the card. Yeah.
You're filling up your graveyard, and you're making sure you hit your land drops.
So could this go in the blue-green?
The blue-green Mongoose Delver Bear thing.
Yeah. What's the mechanic called? Oh, jeez. The blue-green Threshold deck.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you want to sacrifice counter spells and stuff like that for this though.
Yeah, Thought Scour and Mental Note seem better.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those cards where I kind of get that gut feeling that there's some use for it. I can't tell you what it is. I don't know where this fits, but it's got enough text on it for a common where I'm like, this probably does a thing. There's probably some use for it. So I know that's not, an empirical standard. It's not like, oh, this card has a bunch of text on it. It must be good. It's got enough interesting text on it.
I was sort of hoping Oubliette or Gorilla Shaman will be reprinted in this set.
I was kind of too. I kind of thought that Gorilla Shaman wouldn't get reprinted. And hear me out. It's a small set. There's not going to be that many artifacts in it.
Yeah.
It was just always the thing.
We just saw that art. The data mined art. Where did that come from?
We still don't really know unless If someone knows where that sweet art of, a monkey with a big old sapphire in its hand came from.
That's called Gorilla Shaman.
Yeah. If someone knows what the deal with that is, please let us know.
Yeah, because we are a hankering for it.
I also just want it in paper.
Yeah,
I really do.
We are a hankering.
The old one's kind of janky. I don't know. Like, this set was sweet. Also, Kiln Fiend's in it. For people who like Kiln Fiend, you can play it in limited again.
With Berserk.
With Berserk. I'm waiting for the Bad Beats story. I'm going to hear it. Someone's going to pull that off, and I'm going to get to hear the story about someone, like, one-shotting a person with a Berserk on, like, turn 4 or 5. I don't know.
Serum Visions. Berserk.
I don't know. I'm super pumped for the set. It looks really, really interesting. I'm not sure if Monarch is great for our format. I think there's a chance it is. I think that there's just like a chance it's good. But I don't know. I don't know if it fits better in the aggro decks or the control decks. I will say there's a green one for 5 and a green. It's a 4/4. You become the Monarch, and as long as you are the Monarch, it can block 2 creatures. I kind of want to try it in Turbo Fog.
Yeah. Well, so being the Monarch is actually pretty good in Turbo Fog because you blank all their attacks and you're playing Jace's Erasure.
Yeah.
So that seems okay.
Also, if they only have 2 things and they don't have 4 power combined, you can just chump them forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, it gives you the excuse to it gives you a creature so you can actually run Pulse of Marasa.
That seems pretty good.
The spice is a brewing.
So, man, Adrian's Spice Cabinet, too. Electric Boogaloo. Except
Again,
this time it's Mike's Spice Cabinet.
I feel like we need to mix that joke up sometimes. I feel like maybe Spice Cabinet 2 Reloaded.
Okay, whatever. Mike's in there reaching for the peppercorn right now.
But yeah, no, I think this is cool. There were a bunch of sweet reprints. Go out and draft this. Like, I'm not a huge drafter. I like Cube. And I'm also not a huge multiplayer person. I have rallied against EDH a lot. I am not a fan. I feel like it's like the quickest way to poison a friendship with someone who you actually liked. And I really like this. I purchased 2 whole boxes of the original Conspiracy, and I don't buy that much sealed product. So definitely try this out. If you have a brew featuring any cards from Conspiracy 2, please send it our way. We will definitely feature it immediately because I want to see what you're doing with these cards.
You will go to the top of the heap too. Reloaded. All right, that joke didn't work out there.
No,
I'm sorry.
no.
I went for it, though.
It's okay. You miss every shot that you don't take. That was the thing that Michael Jackson said.
Did Michael Jackson say that?
No, he didn't. It was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I like that you had to think about that for a moment, though. Yeah, no. I think we're getting a little close to wrapping stuff up. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we kind of slow stuff down?
Nah, I think we're good. Affinity's the best deck. Don't play Gorilla Shaman. Unbanned Cranial Plating. The end.
All right. So just the usual crap posting at the end.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Cranial
Yeah.
Plating.
Yeah. Okay. We'll unban cranial plating. The catch is we also have to unban invigorate.
All right, never mind. But like we were saying, that's all we got for today. Special thanks to Pat's Games for giving us a place to play Weekly Pauper. Special thanks to L for the use of his song Quantitative as our theme music. You can find that and other great tracks under the name LLL on SoundCloud. Please subscribe to us to YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. We're also on iTunes, so if you subscribe there, please leave an iTunes review, especially a written one, because that really helps us out. If you have an idea for a discussion topic or a deck list you'd like for us to discuss, you can either use the contact form on our website or email us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. I'm Adrian Gonzalez.
And I'm Michael Petchek.
And we're signing off for Color Commentary.